Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honored to speak with two gentlemen from the LTO Network. We have both the CEO and the lead architect in the hot seats today to discuss, explicate, and explore exactly what the LTO Network stands for. So firstly, we have the CEO. His name is Rick Schmitz. He's here to lead and to explore everything that is LTO. Rick, thank you very much for your time.
Hi Brad, how you doing?
Nice to meet you, mate. And also with the Fro, a very cool looking lead architect, I have to say. We have another person who is leading the way in this really interesting project, and his name is Arnold Daniels. Arnold, thank you very much for your time also.
Thanks for having us.
Not a problem, mate. Okay, let's get down into this. Let's not waste time. I want to talk about your slogan firstly. Now, you guys explain that you are all about being a decentralized workflow, essentially related to the blockchain. Let's break down exactly what that means. It is quite vague for those who perhaps don't know a lot about it. Let's start with decentralization. Is that really what you're about, or is it distribution? Let's explore the slogan. Rick, do you want to start?
Arnold.
Arnold?
No, let Arnold take it away from there. He knows exactly why it's called that way, and he came up with the name.
All right, well, you're in the hot seat right now, Arnold. Let's explore why it's decentralized. Explain to us what you're all about, and then perhaps we can discuss the concept of distribution, because that's also in your white paper.
Exactly. So normally when you automate a workflow, you do that within an organization, and you can simply host that on your system, no problems there. But when you have a business process that reaches multiple organizations that do not necessarily have an alignment of interests, then it becomes more interesting, because who's going to host that solution? And do all the parties trust that that organization with their data? That's the question. And the answer is, more often than not, no, they don't. So inter-organizational automation simply doesn't happen. Each organization automates their own part, and then they pick up the phone or use something like fax or maybe email to communicate. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're creating a way where all the parties can implement and automate their part and use the blockchain to work on a single process.
Okay, well that makes sense. Now, with regard to distribution, is that also a factor in the way in which you disseminate and you break down access through nodes, for example? There's a lot of information about that in your white paper too. Is that imperative in the way that you distribute data?
Yes, so what we're doing there is we're creating a permissionless private layer. That means that anybody is able to run a node, and the nodes will connect to each other. However, they won't start sharing data yet, what you see with public chains. Instead, when you go and you collaborate on a process, the nodes share the data. So everybody within that process always have the same copy and the same state.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And we'll talk about the hybridization later, because I do want to talk to you more on that. But let's now talk about workflows, because you have diagrams to explain the processes. There's workflows in normal business. What sets this workflow apart? Why is it something that's novel and new and relevant to blockchain?
So let me answer that one, Brad. If you want to deal with governments and multinationals, they are reluctant of replacing their own systems and working on one central solution. They basically want to work together, but they want to work together with participating on the process with their own stuff. They have codified already so much in legislation how to work on a process that runs between multiple organizations or governments, but they don't automate them. They use the old school fax machines, postal mail and emails to communicate on a process. To reach another level of collaboration that can be done by running the workflow over the organizations instead of communicating in the old-fashioned way and putting it in their centralized silos again. So we are unlocking a new way of collaboration by implementing LTO Network.
Right, okay. Well, perfect segue into the explicating the terminology. So LTO, Rick, what does that stand for? What is the acronym all about?
it's liquid task orchestration. So the way you give tasks to people in a process can be done in a liquid way. It can be automated. So the system tells you when you're up to do the task within a workflow. So that's basically it.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about your team for a moment. We have your lead architect here. So it's great to see you here, Arnold. But you talk about exactly what LTO stands for from a technological standpoint, but have you guys got it, what it takes with regard to your team? Talk us through the experience generally. Perhaps, Rick, you could talk about the biz side of it, and then Arnold, if you could talk about the qualifications of the team from the tech side. Let us know that you can do this, because literally we're talking about startups here. We're not talking about altcoins. Have you got what it takes to really be a long-term viable system that you can build out globally?
Yeah, so let me start with the business side first there, Brad. I think we do. We've been in the landscape for about 4 years now. So we started in 2014 with a centralized solution on process automation, right? So our clients came to us, guys, can you automate this business process for us? We have documents, we have a workflow, and we want to speed it up and make sure it goes as fast as possible. Where we reuse from other systems the data so that we can create efficiency throughout our organization. But then our clients became a little bigger and more countries were involved. And the more countries getting involved, the more different systems they're starting to use. And they're starting to ask whether it was possible to have other parties outside of their organization starting to work on that solution as well. And that's when the first question came, like, guys, how can we make sure that we collaborate on this process, but we keep the data? Like, can we do something on premise or anything like that? And then Arnold said, boom, this is it. We can implement blockchain here. And then we started to look at smart contracts. And basically finding out that it was not useful for the case that we're trying to solve here. And then we thought, like, hey, the finite state machine engine we've built for digitizing those workflows for those corporates is actually really useful to implement as a blockchain solution. So instead of going from a white paper to a product, we made a product on demand and created a blockchain project out of that. Right. So we did it the way around, right? I did a business before in the Netherlands, so this is not my first startup. My first startup, called firm24.com, is the biggest legal process automator in the Netherlands. We do about 10% of every corporate law thing in the Netherlands, and that's done in a platform. So if you want to incorporate a Dutch entity or do share transfer, that's basically done through our software platform. 25 people work there, and it goes really well there. Right. But I focus. I'm not a director there anymore. Stopped that company. That's run by other people. So I'm focusing on legal things right now. So we started as a small startup spin-off out of Firm24. I created a team with only 3 people, and it grew more, and actually hitting $1.4 million in revenue in 4 years' time. So we're a project making actual money on what we're doing here. So
right, and Rick, I want to stop you there, because so often I talk to ICO startups, and this is important while we break this down right now with you, is that are you suggesting, or are you saying very explicitly that you are using the experience, the business savvy, and also the structures that you've built previous to blockchain, and then you're integrating all of that blockchain skill set that your other technological team can bring into what you already have built? This is important because when the buzzwords right now we see are revenue and hybridization, and we're going to discuss both of them today. But are you saying that you can really bring it to the fore and meld this whole potential for revenue and the blockchain?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So instead of trying to find out what the next big thing is going to be, we basically have created something based on a problem that we solve, right? So actually, the business pulled the product out of the startup here. And people are willing to pay to solve their pains, right? They want process automation in a interorganizational setting. So let's say that governments can work together more efficiently. Right. So getting rid of that fax machine. So they pulled the product we built out of us instead of the other way around. And that also brings that we're getting paid to offer this solution, which is, well, quite new to the scene, I would say. Like, we're able to hold our pens up without burning through all the cash all at once to build the solution. So I think that the next generation blockchain startups need a revenue model in there as well, right? If you want to keep on existing in the next 20 years, or you want to become a real big business and trying to get worldwide adoption, you don't need a whole pile of cash that you're going to burn through in a couple of years. No, you need a sustainable business model which you can implement and grow upon and grow your team upon.
Right.
And to kickstart that or to accelerate that growth by doing an ICO, I think that's a great mechanism.
Right, and I'm glad you said it's a mechanism, because often it's overlooked as exactly that, in that it is designed to be a way of capital raising. But let's talk to you, Arnold, for a moment now, because obviously with Rick's business experience, he's got the background, it's evidenced in how he's running successful companies in the Netherlands, but you also need a tech team to transition and morph into this new wave of business that utilizes blockchain. Has your team got it? How can you prove these credentials that you can actually build the infrastructure that Rick needs?
Yes, what I think is important is that you actually have a team that can build a product. And you so often see that the project is just centered around a single technician that basically has to do everything. And here we have a really well-rounded team with people who have either specific skills, but also a lot of overlapping skills. So we can help each other out and talk to each other, communicate with each other about how are we going to solve, how we're going to tackle the problems that we face and that we're trying to solve.
Right. What kind of areas are you talking about in terms of experience? You know, what kind of skill sets generally are we talking about?
So we have a strong experience in architecture. So rather than just going and starting coding, we're looking at the system more in terms of which larger building blocks are there that can communicate, which existing systems can we connect to already get a functioning system which we can build upon. Then most of our team members come from the startup world, so they know what to look for. They know how to work. You cannot just say, okay, we're going to build this and go into the dungeon for 6 months and come out with a product. You always have to be adaptive. You have to see, okay, what are we doing? Is that correct? Is that actually what we want to build? And that's something that I think the whole team is very experienced with.
Right. Okay. And obviously people can go and check into the credentials. They can go and it's all transparent, no doubt, for the team. If people would like to know more, they can go to the website, can't they, and look at the team itself?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think I want to add one thing that you don't see quite often. We separated the role of CTO from lead architect. So we have a lead architect that can think of how the product would look in a bigger perspective. So what's the end goal? What should it do in equilibrium state? And we have a CTO that can actually plan out and understands how this project is going from an MVP, let's say, to a 4.0 version of the project. So that is really important if you want to reach the goals within a tech team.
Right. Okay. So you've made it clear that the roadmap's important.
I think that's spot on. These are so different roles where the CTO should really be a people person. He needs to manage the team, and that doesn't really combine well with somebody who really wants to and needs to go nose deep in the tech.
Absolutely.
So
we see the mistake. Well, sorry to interrupt, but we see the mistake,
Sure.
Arnold, over and over again. Vitalik was never, never intended to be the core spokesperson for Ethereum. He was the lead technologist, remains to be that. But there's a certain skill set in those that want to lead our business. And what you're saying, both of you, is that you've really focused on those who can take this into that social and even into that business frame and really present the case for your business.
Definitely.
Okay, now let's talk a bit more tech, Arnold. Let's go into hybridization. It's a buzzword right now. People understand the value of permission, not just a permissionless component. Talk us through how you're going to integrate private blockchains into your architecture.
So what we do is we've created a layer solution. So rather than saying, hey, we only have a private permission blockchain, or we only have the public blockchain, we have several parts. So we have a public permissionless layer, which we primarily use for anchoring. And then on top of that, we have what we call the event chain, which is a private permissionless chain. And on top of that, we have something which what we call linked data. So that's not on-chain at all, but that's just data that's being linked and being hashed, so you can share it, but also delete it. So I really think that layered approach is necessary to build practical cases with blockchain technology.
Okay, I want to talk, Rick, about why. Because we understand, well, many of the people who are in this crypto sphere understand the value points of permission. It allows for control of data. It allows for the imperatives of trying to protect certain data for the person that you're doing business with. But who is using this? What is the point of value with regard to these mechanisms that are built in these layers? What's the feedback been so far from business side with regard to permission and the needs for it?
Yeah, certainly. Let me grab a case that everybody in the world understands, and that was the waste transportation in Europe. So they had a problem that they needed to issue permits in the Ministry of Infrastructure in the Netherlands to ship waste at a recycling depot in, let's say, Belgium. And Belgian authorities got the facts in that a certain transport has taken place. So they were saying, like, can we not do this with something with Hyperledger or whatever? I said, no, actually thing you can only use is a private permissionless solution we have. Because when you have a permissioned private chain, then you always have, again, a centralized party controlling the parties that can be added to the ledger. And besides that, there need to be ad hoc collaborations on the fly as well, because if you're doing 600,000 transportations each year, sometimes the guy who ships the waste is sick, so a new driver needs to jump in. It's really hard to add somebody to that ledger because other people need to agree upon that, right? So the guy who's controlling the foundation needs to say, yes, it's okay that Mr. X goes to participate on this ledger to do this one shipment. It's not practical at all. So we need ad hoc collaborations, and there you need permissionlessness for. Okay. So that's why we are very different from other projects and unlocking new values in the landscape.
Right.
Just from a business perspective, we just got the report out, and it seems that they have saved on the processes 58% on every transport in the Netherlands ministry alone. So it was 150 euros, now it's 62 euros by managing the processes automatically.
And that's utilizing the technology that you guys have built based on blockchain for that as a service to that company.
Exactly. So that $43 million save per year on automating this on our network.
And is that published information as well, Rick? Can people go and read through that paper or that audit or that statement?
The 3rd of December, this will be published by the Ministry of Infrastructure in the Netherlands as well. So we got the internal report, which I can share with you, this information. So you have the scoop. But yeah, it will be published on the 3rd.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that. Now, today I was going through Twitter. I saw yourself. You were on a scooter with somebody else from the team. And what was interesting is you mentioned the word government there. So I want to talk to you quickly about that, and then I'll move back to Arnold of talking about permissionlessness in the context of private, because it is an oxymoron to most. So I want to talk to you about that, Arnold. But let's talk about government from now and the future. Clearly, in the Netherlands, you've piqued their interest, and they're working with you in different ways. Is that likely to continue and expand?
Yeah, definitely. So the project is running really good. Not only people liking it, people see the add value of it. There's a big difference between that. So it needs to add value to their and on top of their current process. So either in efficiency or reduction of anything. So yes, we bring value to not only the Netherlands, but also to the Belgian authorities that are involved in the project as well. Right? I was indeed yesterday in first Eindhoven to present this the same solution to another department of the Belgian authorities, which heard about the project. So we got our footprint at our friendly neighbors as well. But later that day, I was presenting this to the German authorities as well. They heard about the project and came to Rotterdam to listen to our talk, to present their delegates what we were doing, and if they can be involved in the project as well, because the shipments of waste also go to Germany and to other countries in Europe. So it's very likely to expand. At Catalonia,
Rick, sorry to interrupt, but could this be argued that it's not only a great use case, it's been implemented in a governmental department, but it's potentially a pilot program that could be adopted not just in even Europe? Surely this can really move out into different regions of the world if it's successful, if it's really hitting the mark with efficiency, productivity from the top down. If you're saving money for a company, surely that's going to pique the interests of those parties.
Definitely. So that's how it goes, right? So we're running 1,000 processes now, and the 1,000 processes lead to a certain conclusion, and of course you will iterate to make it even better, to gain more efficiencies throughout the processes as well. And when it works, there's a steering group in Europe, which the governments of the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany are all involved in. And if the steering group gets work, they already know about this project. If they present the results of the project, then it's really likely that it roll out through Europe. And they choose this fabric to solve their waste problems, right? Right. Because I think it's the only solution that can actually do what we do.
Okay, let's talk about the tech again. Now, I mentioned before the oxymoron, and I don't mean to be rude, Arnold, but quite often we hear this collaboration between public and permissioned, meaning we hear permissionless and permissioned in the context of an amalgam of the two. You're bringing them together and saying it's private permissionlessness. How on earth is that even possible?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So if we want to talk about permissionless, we're looking at the nodes who can participate. So if, for instance, if we take Ethereum, anybody can run an Ethereum node and connect to that network. But then on that node, you have specific logic, in this case, smart contracts. And those define what you can actually do with that contract. So while you can read everything on Ethereum, since it's a public network, it doesn't mean you can do or write anything. You cannot, for instance, if there's an amount of Ether in a specific smart contract, you cannot simply take that and put it on your account. Only the owner of that smart contract can do that. Right. So privileges do exist also on a permissionless chain, but they're defined only in the contracts. So if you take that logic, you can also apply that to private blockchains by also putting the read privileges in that contract. So all the nodes can participate, can connect, but the condition who can actually go and read and get that data, that's within that contract. So how do you do it? If you have one global blockchain, that's not really possible. But by saying, okay, we're going to create a miniature blockchain, so we're going to create a blockchain per contract, you can actually say, okay, do you have permission for this contract? Yes, then you get that whole chain which starts, so the Genesis block is that contract, and everything that's related to it, you get a copy of that. So that's kind of similar to maybe other distributed systems like Git, where you don't have one big ledger, but instead you have multiple chains on a single system.
Well, let's talk about now the trilemma, because I'm hearing alarm bells in my ear when I hear of this discussion of you having arguably a significant number of private blockchain potential in what you want to do, the kind of business you guys want to build. But inherent in that is the challenge of trying to maintain the scalability capacity as you build out. And on top of that, also maintaining strong security as well. So we hear the conversation right now of parallel scaling. We see things like side chains emerge, child chains from different blockchains. How are you going to ensure that you continue to scale successfully without compromising these private blockchains that you're building out on top of as a layered solution on your blockchain platform?
So what we're doing is we're actually leveraging the public blockchain by anchoring each event, each transaction of the private chain to the public chain. So we're writing a hash on the public chain. That workload is much lighter than if you do all logic on the public chain. If you would have smart contracts on there, and actually you can go and aggregate those anchors, so you can create Merkle trees out of that. So that really helps with the scalability. And those private chains, those are share nothing environments, so you can easily apply horizontal scaling towards that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how are you going to deal with interoperability between these, arguably these silos that could essentially become that of these private blockchains in the system? How are you going to link them to this main hub that you talk about for the transactional value, that is that bottom layer? How are you going to allow that ease of interoperation?
So the bottom layer, that's specifically there to verify the information on these private chains. And these private chains, they can communicate with each other through what we call communicating finite state machines. So basically, they share a transaction with each other. So one writes to the other process, and that acknowledges that write. So that way you sync up both the processes.
Right.
And that's a very, very common method of doing this.
Okay. What about SDKs? I know I'm asking a lot of these questions, but with regard to potential development for devs, for this to expand beyond just your team, for interaction, for those who perhaps want to help build your ecosystem, can they do it? Is there going to be an SDK or some sort of system to allow for engagement for developers?
Yes, we have SDKs now. We have an SDK for Java, JavaScript, Python, and PHP. More will be coming there. We also have specifications, so really writing your own library here is very doable, but we'll try to help all the developers by creating these SDKs.
Okay, and what about with regard to the activity on the GitHub? How closed source are you, open source? How active is it? How much engagement are you seeing, and is this building in terms of interest?
So we have quite a lot of the code open source. We'll put a little bit more of the core components also as open source. So anybody's just able to take this and to go and run a process. We're seeing some activity. People are picking this up. Still, we're really working creating a project and not really looking at these
Right.
these.
And I think it's a good point. And Rick, I want to go to you for that with regard to your laser focus of business. That's what I'm hearing from you, having spoken to you previously to this interview, is that you really want to build out the pragmatics of this to make this functional so that people can start using this in the business frame. Is it really the focus right now just to focus on your projects, what you're building, as opposed to building out this DApp ecosystem we see from platforms that emerge now?
Yeah, so I think LTO Network, it should be an open source solution, right? For everybody, for the taking, to build their own pilot projects in their own countries. Because obviously, we cannot do it all by ourselves, right? If you want to create mass adoption, you should open source your product.
Right.
But you should always attach a business model to it. So one of our advisors is the guy who set up Docker into Europe. Right? And they are super open source, and they leveraged on their open source to build a business on top of that. So I see more integrators doing that. So I'm approaching integrators, which I like to work with, that understand the solution, that are building new tech solutions, and new ecosystems where they can make money with my product. I think that is a really good viable business model, which I think we're going to win the game with.
Right. Well, to do that, you need that fundamental technology to really take this to the fore in a business frame. So let's go back to Arnold for a moment. Talk about your consensus mechanism. I was reading that you have your own innovations. It's important, literally. So talk us through that. How does it work, and why is this important?
Yeah, so if we start with the private chains, the problem with consensus on those chains is that there might be too little participants. You might be in a process with only 2 participants. So you cannot really force a specific consensus in that. If there's a conflict, there's a conflict. Right. So what we're doing is we're relying on the public chain and on the order of the anchored hashes on that. So on the public chain, we're using a variant of proof of stake called proof of importance. What you can have with proof of stake, especially least proof of stake, is that you get a few nodes and everybody starts leasing out to those nodes. They're well known, they're safe, you know you're going to get a portion of the transaction fee. So that ends up with a lot of centralization. That's basically what you see now with current projects that are doing least proof of stake. So to combat that, we're introducing something called the revel factor. So that means that we don't only look at your stake of the tokens, but also at how active are you using the network.
Right.
So if you're not doing any transactions, you're just getting a ratio of 1. But if you're doing about the same amount of transactions that the stake that you have, so for instance, you're doing 1% of all transactions on networks and you have 1% of all the tokens, you're getting a bonus. You're getting a ratio of 1.5. Right. So that really helps. That really helps with when people are leasing out these tokens, they're leasing out the tokens to those organizations that are actually using the platform.
So you're rewarding the activity, literally. And that relates also to a very interesting troll mechanism you've built in for your token structure. And I want to talk to you about that later, so we'll get to that. But what I do like hearing from both of you is that you are focused on, again, rewarding usership to make sure that people are validated or recognized for their contributions to this long-term position that you both hold in your team, that you want to be here as a real deal business. You're not just here to play as an ICO.
100%.
Okay.
No. Exactly.
Right. Let's talk about some issues of the transition from the POS to your model. I want to ask you this, Arnold, because I couldn't quite understand why you didn't just do POS. Why didn't you do proof of stake and move with that? Wouldn't it have been sufficient, given that Ethereum is moving in that direction? Many others are doing it. Wouldn't it have been suffice?
Well, we have to look at the current projects that are doing proof of stake, especially lease proof of stake. So if you look at NXT, the first project that was doing this, you can really see that currently there are 2 nodes that have or that control over 50% of the voting power. That centralization that brings about a lot of risk. If they come together and they say, hey, we want to make this change, which is not beneficiary to the users, but it's going to be beneficiary to us,
Right.
There's basically no way of stopping that. So we're really focused on, okay, how can we get that decentralization?
Right. Okay. So what do businesses think when they hear that term, though, Rick? I really want to ask you this, because they don't like that. They like to be in control. They like to know that they are utilizing technology to benefit them. So do they care? Do they actually care that you're trying to do something for the betterment of better business?
Yeah, they actually don't care about tokens and coins and stuff like that, but they do care about security. So that's really important to them. Like, okay, we're choosing for your solution because you cannot tamper with the data that we put on there, right? So we created them, and it's really hard to do business with governments if you're trying to sell them tokens. That's like practically impossible because they have no idea how to account for that. Right. So what we came up and doing, like, okay, we have a company that integrates the solution. So we would buy tokens as an integrator and provide the tokens to the nodes. We lease the tokens to the nodes of the governments or international organizations that want to run our solution. So in that way, they don't have to deal with buying tokens, putting that on a wallet, putting that on a node, but we simply do that for them. So we provide that service and receive the benefits on top of that, so that they can just pay in fiat like they're used to, and the integrator benefits from the transaction fees they receive. And if they're buying a enterprise solution, they're paying for that as well.
Right, and Rick, you make a really important point there, because you're making that seamless with the fiat transactions for those businesses. That is super important, because if you don't make it easy and you don't make it seamless for them, they won't adopt this.
No, exactly. So you need to make it really easy. Integrators, they are much easier to talk to because they're techies as well. They're used to implementing infrastructures and software products. But a government just wants a working solution, and how you do it, they don't really care about that. So make it plug and play and easy. You need to spin up a node within a couple of minutes and then go for it.
Right.
And how token economy interferes with that, they simply don't care, as long as it is secure and proven secure.
And obviously legal. And that's another issue we'll talk about later with jurisdictions, terminology, utility versus security. But Arnold, I want to talk to you now about, I've been studying this a little bit today with regard to W3C, R3. We see a lot of these internal permission systems. Banks are using them. There's several. Hyperledger to a degree is using part of this. So what do you say to a business that, from a technological standpoint, I mean, who would say to you, listen, we can do with this, we don't even need a token system to do this because we can work with this company. I know you've mentioned centralization's one, but are there any other reasons why they could technically choose a non-tokenized structure and get the same service?
Yeah, so initially that sounds really good. We can do this without having to worry about the token. Right. But what you're really getting is a authoritative party that has to pay for setting up this network. So in effect, they will own that network. That makes it really difficult for other parties to come and join that. They'll never be at that same level.
Right. So is it kind of like Google? It's kind of like the Googleizing of the system, where it remains to be where you're really reaching out to a centralized party, not just a third party, but heavily centralized.
No, Brett, this is actually that's definitely the case. But a blockchain example of this is the Maersk project with IBM on supply chain. It failed, and they communicated that it failed because nobody wanted to join. And why did nobody want to join? Because there was an obligated product push, which would making which were diminishing the benefits that the blockchain would bring to the smaller parties involved. So there wasn't a level playing field because it basically was paid and controlled by one central party, being Maersk.
Right.
So that doesn't work in practice.
Sure. Well, I think you've clarified that.
When you have a proof of stake type of system, you can actually buy yourself in the network. So it doesn't matter if somebody else was there first. If you just buy a similar amount of token, you have the same voting power there. So that opportunity to just say, okay, I'm going to put down some money and I'm going to buy this control that I need to make sure that everything is secure. That's very important. Right. So it allows the access for the average person. And let's talk about your partners now, Rick. To run this, you need support. That's the whole premise of the ICO, is the capital raising. Who put their hand up? What are their names? And are they there? And I really want to talk about this for the long haul. And how can we make sure that they don't simply just dump your value as soon as they possibly can?
Yeah. So okay, our partners are definitely the businesses that are using our product. So I'm talking about parties like the governments, Deloitte. I'm talking about big multinationals like Heineken that are using the product to gain efficiency from the LTO network. But the investors in the network, we did a seed round, and I said, okay, I'm doing this only small seed round for my friends and friends of friends. And it turned out that it was paid in, I think, 85% or something like that fiat. The first time they were investing in a project. Basically, the people that bought into this, about 1,000 ish, they came up.
What? Let's just clarify that. 1,000 what do you mean?
1,000 people.
Okay, 1,000 people. So you've got a lot of friends in that seed round, but what's the size of it so people can understand what kind of scope are we talking about as a seed round?
Yeah, so I said to them, I only need about $1.4 million to go from zero to a working product, which I can roll out and prove to you that it works. Okay. So that was the first raise we did in early December. And we collected that money, we built the product, we got the adoption for the first phase, and we're ready to go mainnet now. And now we're doing the second part. We're raising 3.6 in total extra $1 million.
Okay.
And then to go to the next level, and that's the growth stage. So we've passed the stage where we prove that we have a product that has a product market fit because people are buying it and willing to pay for it. And now it's time to scale that product with other parties. So sorry. Okay,
so let's pull it back because I'm going to talk to you about those two, the seed round and the prospective round that you're about to do as you move to mainnet. It is mainnet, isn't it, that you're moving towards? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, but let's pull it back now to those investors where we were talking about at the beginning, because they're not in that seed round. Is that true? You mentioned friends. I would assume they're different to the strategic investors that really believe in your product and your business.
No, well, everybody gets the mainnet token, right? So the mainnet tokens are there.
I'm talking about investors at the moment, just investors, these 1,000 people.
Everybody. So that's businesses, investors, everybody has mainnet tokens.
Right.
And in order to liquidize those mainnet tokens, you need to walk over a bridge to ERC20 tokens. And there's a troll on that bridge. And that will basically collect a part of the transition fee and basically a punishment to go out of the project, right? So the hodlers that are on mainnet and have the belief in the project that it's going to be successful, they will get rewarded because the supply will be lower because the bridge troll, he burns the fees that he collected to walk over the bridge.
Okay, so let's get this clear. Let's clarify this because it's quite innovative. I've not seen this, and I actually saw this on Twitter today. So you're saying that if people cash out early, they are going to be penalized.
Definitely. So yeah, we're rewarding hodlers because we didn't like the lockup mechanism you see today, right? You have a smart contract. Oh, okay, these tranches are going to unlock. And that's where you see the candles the candlesticks, the red candlesticks on every platform your token is trading, people will dump it. But you will have a more gradual out and inflow if you create a mechanism like a bridge troll, where you diminish the fees over time. The longer you hold, the lower the fees will go over time. So you're rewarding the people that are believing in the project, which gives us time for the investors that put a second round of money in to prove that we can get to the level of adoption that the product needs, so that we as a team prove that we're putting the mouth where the money is.
Absolutely. So you're putting your money where your mouth is, and I like that concept. I want to talk to you about, and maybe I could talk to you about this, Arnold. You could help us with the numeric
Sure.
response. Now, Rick mentioned 1,000 people. He has a lot of friends, clearly, but is that also because distribution of even seed is important? When we're talking about trying to ensure and protect the value of your startup and what you're trying to build, we often see the opposite, where there's so few that get into seed, and it becomes quite a monopolistic investment. We've seen it right in the very first iterations of all the way back to Bitcoin, where so few have become very rich. Is that the premise of having 1,000 to really make it fairer?
Yes, that has been what we looked at all along. We don't want a few parties, basically, who have nothing to do with our network, to hold all those tokens and to have all that voting power. So it's important to spread the tokens, to make sure that in the end, the actual users get the say in how the network works, and making sure it's secure.
Right. Okay. So what's happening for this next round? Let's move into the roadmap for a moment. Now, obviously, you're looking towards those investors who want to support the utility and the business. Now, this is a tough question. How are you going to do this when, for the most part, people treat crypto as securities? Even though they're not, they treat them as securities in the way in which the game is played out for speculation.
Yeah, so let me pick up this question. It's a really tough one indeed. The reason why we didn't do a massive ICO yet is that we really wanted to wait until we had mainnet. So the level of adoption where we can prove that we have an actual product, where I say we don't even need to ask the US authorities whether we are a security, yes or no. We are a clear utility. If you have a product and you can use that product with a token, then this is a utility, right? That there's a speculative element to it is actually not important to us. We didn't design this to be a speculative thing. It can be if other people attach value to that. And it's the same as buying early into software licenses. If you believe in a product, you get a reduction on that as well for the usage for the first 3 or 4 years. So if you sign a contract with an early startup as a launching customer, you obviously get a better deal than when you're 10 years ahead and where your product has matured a lot. So basically, I'm rewarding people who jump into my software project early, and they can use it from day one as a utility, but they can hold it and maybe sell the software product, which they can distribute to others for more in the future.
Right. Okay. Now, today I read a tweet from Craig Wright, and we won't discuss whether we like that man or not. That's not relevant. But what he did say in his tweet was that all ICOs are securities. There's absolutely no exception. What do you say to that, Rick, to that statement when you're building something very different?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of ICOs yet that actually had a product. So yes, I think he's 100% right, because if you're selling a promise on a white paper, which you see at most projects, then yes, you're raising money for a future promise, right? Then he's 100% right. But if you issue a token to pay as a token that you can use to have the product working, then you're looking at a clear utility. So yeah, I think but I think we're one in not so many projects that actually had mainnet launched on the day they do the ICO.
Right. So are you saying that some ICOs, just to be clear, can actually be true utilities?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, because as long as you issue a token that can be used from day one, then you're sorted.
Okay. Now, my next question is, given that there's a provability factor for you, you're very driven by proof. Why such a small raise, Rick? If you, in this climate, are rare, you're a gem. If you can prove your value on paper with real business, why raise 3.4 or something to that effect with regard to millions of dollars for this next round?
Yeah. So what I did is I modeled with my CFO. I modeled and projected the revenues of what we are going to make in the next few years. So we're doing 1.4 right now, and I said, okay, how to if we go on with this and have the level of adoption which is currently happening with the traction we do, how much money do we need for sales, marketing, and people to hire in the next few months and years to go to a next level stage, to go to 10 million in revenues in 2021. So I modeled that with my colleague, and we came out that we only needed $3.56 million to actually reach that, right? And I thought, like, okay, how on earth can you raise 100 million as a project and try to spend?
I can tell you how. Look at Hashgraph. Look at Dfinity. Look at so many in 2017. That's how they do it. They did do it.
Yeah, but how would you spend that for the benefit of your product? It's impossible to hire that amount of people in such a short period of time. You can spend that money, but basically then you're being fucked over. To say it just say it out loud.
Yeah.
If you want to build a business, you iterate. You need new people a lot of times, right? A new phase of your company requires a new sort of people. And every time you go to that iteration cycle, you need to hire new staff. You need to train them. You need to get them into the project. And spending more than $3.5 million, including the revenues we're getting in over the next few years, and building a company with more than 30 people, that's already the stretch for most companies in a short period of time. Right. So if you're a startup with 10 people, don't expect to grow to 1,000 people in 3 years. Also not with 100 million in funding. Then it basically burns, then it basically sits on the bank and does nothing. Right? Then you can not raise that amount of money.
Well, you're clearly very passionate about making sure that you're not representing the avarice of so many that we see. You want to just really, again, use that word pragmatic. You want to get down, prove that every dollar is accountable, and make it, I guess, really frugal. Really account for every dollar. But I want to talk to you about one more criticism you're going to get from community from somewhere, and that will be the question of: are you simply trying to do a low cap? Are you simply trying to do something to pique the interest of the bear market so that people invest in you in the sense of supporting your utility?
Yeah, so indeed, it is also, the market is really slow at the moment. There are not a lot of VCs investing or looking the cat out of the tree, how we say in the Netherlands. But that gives us, it forces you to really look at your resources from another perspective. Like, okay, it was like raising with a snap of your fingers 20, 30, 40 million bucks. And now it's much more hard to raise a decent amount of money. Right. And going for a lower cap makes it easier to raise that amount of money. It makes it also beneficial for future investors, right? Because we are in a low market right now, and when it picks up, that is beneficial for the people who believed in us.
Right. Well, let's talk about lockups. Are you being fair with the way in which that you allow access for your team, for your strategic partners? What is exactly the plan? Talk us about. So the overall cap, we're talking about 5+ mil roughly for the combination of the seed and this pre-sale. But how are you going to ensure that people can trust you if they want to contribute, knowing that the team can't dump or that those strategic partners can't dump? We talked about the troll, but what's the time frame for the plan?
Yeah, so the time frame for the troll, that is 6 months. So it gradually goes down from 60% bridge troll fee to 0% bridge troll fee. So that basically gives us 6 months to prove traction. And with a working product, that's really doable.
Okay, but is that for just those investors, those strategic partners, or is that for the team as well?
No. Okay, that is for the people who got mainnet tokens. So that is for the people that were seed, VC. They are all having mainnet tokens. So that will be so if they get out early, their entire advantage is burned directly.
Right.
For the team, that's a different story. We have lockups that are starting to. The team has lockups, so we can start unlocking our value after half a year, and then gradually spread out over 2 years period. So because we created the token, so we got them for nothing, meaning that we could dump directly, right? If we were not locked. So the team is locked, making sure that that is not going to happen.
Good. Now,
and that there's an escape for others.
Right, and to be frank, I don't think anyone should support any company that simply had an unlocked team token from the outset when the others were locked. That would make no sense. But let's talk about post 6 months. What to do then when the troll's not trolling across the bridge?
Yeah, then either we have a better market where there is more capital inflow and more interest in the token, but basically. If it doesn't happen, and that is always where the scenario I go out from, because I rather prove that we can get the traction within 6 months, where we get the believers that are currently on mainnet and that will go into mainnet over the next few weeks, saying, oh man, what these guys are doing, this is actually next level stuff. I'm going to hold this stuff because I believe that this will go up into the next few years, that where this company in the direction it is going to. So basically, I just need 6 months to prove that that we're good enough to get the traction needed.
Okay, I'm sorry to ask this again, Arnold, because you've been so patient, but I did want to ask one more business-related question to Rick. Now, Rick, how are you going to build out the business development, those interconnections with core members? Let's start with Europe, for example. Really talk us through how you're going to grow this business with core partners that actually do shit, that actually can reciprocate stuff that they can do and offer you as you build out with them.
Yeah, definitely. So Arnold already mentioned the number of SDKs that we are building. And what I'm focusing on, and the team that do business development with me as well, is contacting those integrators, right? Integrators are the most important ones to our ecosystem, right? Because they make money with new solutions. So if you're an SAP integrator, then there's a new way to unlock value in implementing supply chains with our product as well, right? So they can unlock new values to their clients. There are a lot of parties that do blockchain implementation and only have currently Hyperledger in their bag, and I said, okay, this is we have a maybe better solution or an alternative for stuff where Hyperledger doesn't work or where you want to reach a new level of process automation. So please put us in that bag as well when you're going to your client.
And Rick, sorry to interrupt, but just how big is this market? You guys would both know the percentages. I was recently speaking with a CEO who said essentially 90% of businesses around the world are not really actualizing their potential via blockchain yet. That's just in normal business. Is that, are we talking about trillions of dollars of market potential?
Yeah, well, trillions. I did my market analysis and I looked at two things. That is supply and custodian chains. And if you combine those two, we're looking at a $15 billion market. But that is only on centralized process automation. If you would decentralize, you basically also are on the reg tech, the regulatory tech, and on the digital transaction management tech. And if you combine those markets, then you're basically looking at the landscape of our solution. It would add up to about 50 billion on average year on the market, on the total available market.
Okay.
So and reaching those again, known that this is a new solution, that LTO Network is something that you can put in your bag as an integrator, but also rattle the cages in marketing, like, hey, there is something new in the market. So basically getting more people to know the product, what it does, and what the value you bring to companies.
Right. Now, Arnold, to complement that, is the tech ready? You're moving to mainnet. Are you confident that your team are ready to collaborate with the kind of business partners that Rick's talking about and have this seamless, successful launch of the mainnet?
Yes, definitely. We're already building products and having companies using our products for years. So to that point, it's nothing new. It's yet another release. We're there, and it's not a problem.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess, there's been so much discussed today, and we could talk for, hours, I would imagine, on all things LTO network, but we have to finish it at some point. Gentlemen, is there anything you'd like to address, perhaps to the community, perhaps mentioning ways in which people can access more information or how to engage? Arnold, we might start with you, since you are the lead technologist, the lead architect. What would you like to say with regard to anything technological or beyond on behalf of your network?
Yes, there are a lot of parts to our solution. So if people are interested, please read the articles that we write on Medium, where we really dive into different aspects that will give you a good grasp of what we're doing. Right,
and I do apologize, we haven't delve deeper into it. And Arnold, we will catch up again, hopefully, and discuss all the different aspects, trust, certificates, and everything. What about you, Rick? What would you like to say on behalf of your network, your team, to those who are learning more about what you're about?
Yeah, definitely. Well, go to the website LTO.network to learn more about the project. But where I'm typically interested in, okay, you heard about the project and what we do. And if you think, hey, this might be a use case for a business that I do business with, or I know somebody who's integrating something there, please contact me where we can be of help, right? We love to grow the ecosystem. We cannot do that by ourselves, but please engage and give me a message on Telegram.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's been very much a no BS approach, the way that you've discussed these things, particularly you, Rick. It's refreshing to hear from a CEO, literally that no bullshit approach, talking about revenue, talking about hybridization, talking about the things that blockchain actually does with regard to the connections of business and the future of decentralized and distributed economies. So thank you again for showing us how it's working in your country and moving on to other parts of Europe. Look forward to seeing you evolve. Mainnet's the big date that I want to catch up again and see how that unfolds. But until then, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we can catch up again and learn more about your decentralized workflow.
Thank you very much, Brad.
You're welcome.
Thank you.